There's a ton of noise out there. So how do you get decision makers to pay attention to your brand? Start a podcast and invite your ideal clients to be guests on your show. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to B2B Growth, a daily podcast for B2B leaders. We've interviewed names you've probably heard before, like Gary Vaynerchuk and Simon Sinek, but you've probably never heard from the majority of our guests. That's because the bulk of our interviews aren't with professional speakers and authors. Most of our guests are in the trenches leading sales and marketing teams. They're implementing strategy. They're experimenting with tactics. They're building the fastest growing B2B companies in the world. My name is James Carberry. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, a podcast agency for B2B brands, and I'm also one of the co-hosts of this show. When we're not interviewing sales and marketing leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of our own business. We'll share the ups and downs of our journey as we attempt to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show.
Welcome back to the B2B Growth Show. I'm your host for today's episode, Sean Blackburn with Sweetfish Media. Today I'm joined by Megan Sullivan-Jenks, and she is the Director of Marketing and Communications over at Choozle. Megan, how are you doing today?
Good. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us. We're going to be talking today about first-party data usage in digital advertising. But before we jump into that, I'd love for you to give a little background on yourself and what you and the team at Choozle are up to these days.
Yeah. So as you said, I'm the Director of Marketing and Communications at Choozle. My job entails, kind of covering everything from brand, content, and demand gen across the entire US and international. Choozle, we're a digital advertising platform. We kind of mark ourselves at making digital advertising easy. And we do that through bringing, really enterprise level software and tools into one place. So marketers and agencies can execute kind of data collection on their websites and then driving that insight into campaigns across many different channels using many different tactics.
Love it. So you guys are every day doing the work that we're going to be talking about here today. So love that.
That is correct. Yeah.
So we say first-party data usage in digital advertising, but could you just unpack what is first-party data, what is third-party data, and for our listeners that might not know what those terms are, how would you describe that?
Of course. So to put it simply, first-party data is the data that you own or your business owns, your clients own. And that really can be anything from visitors that come to their website. So, Google Analytics is a great indication of your first party data. You can see the number of visits and stuff like that. But then, taking a step further, CRM data or marketing automation data is those email addresses that you've explicitly collected from your prospects or consumers to then use for marketing purposes.
Right.
On the flip side, your third-party data is going to be data that, one, you don't own. And so you're basically kind of buying it from these data partners to use within your, digital advertising campaign. A great example is, MasterCard. When you sign up for a MasterCard account and card, you give MasterCard as a consumer your permission to kind of use your data, and you probably get discounts or rewards related to that credit card that you're using. So then that data is then sold to brands and companies and marketers to then use within kind of the digital advertising space.
Interesting. Yeah. Every time we start, this wasn't in our script to talk through, but every time we start to talk through this, I start to think about just, how much we're being watched and privacy. So it's cool that we're talking about this. Obviously, this has been kind of in the news a lot because of GDPR and just different things that are happening, especially in the European Union. Explain maybe to our listeners why this is kind of all up in the air and, or I shouldn't say up in the air, but why all this is changing for marketers and why they need to be focused on it.
Yeah. So like you said, the kind of news and kind of evolution of what has happened in the last year with GDPR, as well as investigations within Facebook, as well as Google, has really, caused concern for both consumers as well as, marketers that are wanting to use this data ethically. So the European Union just implemented, or I guess it's been a year almost, implemented GDPR, which is essentially legislation that gives protection to the consumers on how their data is used and what rights they have to access that data, have businesses and brands remove that data from their records, and really tries to put a framework in place on, privacy and the ethical use of consumers' data.
Makes sense on paper.
Yeah, for sure.
So how is this changing things for marketers? And you mentioned that marketers are evolving and going back to first-party data because of this implementation. What are you noticing?
Yeah, so I think a lot of marketers are moving back to using first-party data and really as like a safeguard against these kind of changes in kind of the data ecosystem as well as within the legislation. And a lot of that is because they can trust what first-party data is. They collected it themselves. They know, where it came from and, what consumers opted in to, brands using that data. So it's really like a safeguard that marketers are turning to. But on the flip side, it's really kind of changing the availability of third-party data. Facebook just removed, some of their third-party data usage within their platform. There's a lot of kind of questions on, the collection of third-party data. So I think, for the next couple of years, marketers are going to start using more first-party data because, one, they can trust it, but it's also maybe all that they have at their fingertips.
Today's growth story is all about search engine marketing. The company we're highlighting is SentinelOne. This challenger cybersecurity brand was set out to disrupt the endpoint protection space. Their brand was top-notch, their product was innovative, but they were struggling to gain traction online in an already developed industry. Then they found Directive Consulting, a B2B search marketing agency. Within the first quarter of working with Directive, SentinelOne was able to increase their organic traffic by 128% and overall lead volume by an outstanding 251%. Now, I have a hunch that Directive can get these kind of results for you too. So head over to directiveconsulting.com and request a totally free custom proposal. That's directiveconsulting.com. All right, let's get back to this interview.
Interesting. And how will that change, a regular B2B marketer's day on, whenever they're trying to run digital advertising? How do you see that affecting things on, the typical marketer, day-to-day level?
Yeah, I think, on a day-to-day level, it's really, getting the buy-in across your company on the value that first-party data provides. So very simply, like getting your sales team involved in making sure they're filling out kind of all the data fields that you have in your CRM so you can accurately segment your customers. Right. All the way to, like your product and, maybe platform teams, making sure you're able to integrate, tracking and kind of data collection tools within your own platform or kind of shopping site. So you can marry it back to that individual customer and really understand the full value as well as insight that one customer provides. So it's a lot of just getting buy-in and integrating across teams, which isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Right. Yep. Everybody could use a little bit more teamwork, right?
Yes.
And you mentioned also in our notes here how first-party data can drastically change strategies and results for a digital advertising campaign. What sort of results can you see, changed by using first-party data, maybe in comparison to third-party data or just in general?
Yeah. So it's kind of changing the way that we look at, kind of your traditional marketing funnel. So because you're just relying on first party data, so, those kind of lower funnel strategies, you really need to get creative on how you're filling the top of your funnel. So you can't necessarily, you can use third party data to fill top of the funnel of more awareness, but you're looking at strategies that are, kind of more broadly speaking and more educational as opposed to targeting that very specific niche audience. So as a B2B marketer, I can't necessarily always rely on third-party data to find that very specific audience that I'm looking for.
Right.
So I have to turn to strategies where I'm targeting based on the sites that those users might be on or the type of words based on a page versus that individual specifically.
Absolutely. And overall, do you feel like this is a good thing? What's your opinion on the implementation of GDPR and kind of the effects that you're seeing so far?
Yeah, I think, the kind of push of GDPR as well as California recently pushed, similar legislation. It's inevitable that something like this will be coming out, across the entire US as well as in other countries. So it's, as marketers, we need to be flexible and, kind of quick on our feet to adjust to the changing kind of ecosystem, both on a privacy side, but then also, kind of gaining trust back with consumers and the, kind of the practices that has happened as a result of, kind of privacy concerns and ad blockers and all of that.
Absolutely. And you mentioned gaining trust back. I actually, doing some research for our talk, saw that there was a Columbia Business School survey that showed that 75% of consumers are happy to share their data with brands. And I think this is the key part, like you alluded to, that they trust. Do you think that this is going to affect the types of digital advertising campaigns that we see? I know that you mentioned educational advertising campaigns previously. Are there any other sort of things that, as B2B marketers, we could be looking to run in order to help build that trust?
Yeah, I think it goes back to, just kind of the basics of kind of advertising. And that's, you want to aid the entire experience. You don't necessarily want to distract the experience. So I think we'll see less kind of full page takeovers on certain sites and see an increase in kind of native advertising or kind of just advertising that helps and is contextually relevant to the content that our consumers are reading.
Love it. And in that way, that's not going to be a bad thing, right?
No, it's not necessarily a bad thing. I think the more we can push for just a better experience, the more kind of engagement we're going to get and just overall brand trust that you're going to build for your companies.
Absolutely. Well, Megan, this has been a great conversation. I love the perspective on how to utilize first-party data in digital advertising. If anybody's listening has any follow-up questions or would like to connect with you, what's the best way for them to find you?
Yeah, you can just find me on LinkedIn, just Megan Sullivan-Jenks. I'm the only Megan Sullivan-Jenks in the world, which is great.
I'm not the only Sean Blackburn in the world, so you're lucky.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, Megan, thanks so much for being on the show. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Sean.
Digital marketing agencies have a tough job. You have to stay on top of the latest marketing strategies for your clients and your agency. What if there was a way you could address both at the same time? Imagine your agency putting out content with greater quality and quantity. Envision bringing your clients a turnkey solution for one of B2B marketing's fastest growing media strategies, podcasting. You know all those clients asking for your help with their account-based marketing efforts? Picture being the first to bring them the idea of content-based networking, showing them the proven strategy for breaking into their most coveted accounts. Here's the concept. Sweetfish Media is looking to work with a limited number of innovative agencies interested in a new partnership model.
We produce a podcast for your agency. You introduce the power of podcasting and Sweetfish services to your clients. Everybody wins. Learn more at sweetfishpartners.com.